of Silicon Zombies, where you get the best brains from the Bay
and beyond.
We get to demystify emerging tech with all sorts of delicious brains. We are incredibly grateful for the beautiful Park James Hotel. Round of applause for these guys. We're also grateful for our friends at Necodex. That's Necodex. If you need some support in your building product, talk to these guys, necodex.com. They do remarkable work. And maybe let's hop right into it. So we've got Santosh. I practice this. Namaste. Did I do that right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And of course, Wendy from Building Education, and our favorite human.
Thank you.
So maybe as we get into the thick of things, we could do some quick introductions. Santosh, would you like to start us off here?
Sure. Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Santosh Pandey, and I'm from Nepal. I'm based in Kathmandu. I'm not an entrepreneur by profession. It's been 8 years that I'm into entrepreneurship. I started my first company offering happiness. It's e-commerce for experiences. We curate local experiences that are available in Nepal and sell it online. That's the first startup that I started in 2016. And then during COVID, I started the second company. It's a cloud kitchen for cake and bakery product. We are one of the fastest growing cake brand in Nepal right now, and have been very much active in community building and community services. And I work with building education as a project executive. We build schools in the rural part of Nepal. Yeah.
And also Forbes 30 under 30. He's very humble, and we're just so thrilled to have you here. Wendy Shew from Building Education. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So I'm Wendy, founder of Building Education, born and raised in San Francisco. So I'm from this area, and my story is really about finding the hero from within and finding that through education. So my story is about experiencing loss at a very young age, and then having education essentially be my guide and direction in life to becoming a contributing member of society. So I went through a lot of my own personal challenges of losing my mother at a very young age. And then education was essentially like my hero, my guiding light in life. So I studied aviation and learned to fly planes. I became very empowered through learning how to fly, and it taught me that essentially I could do anything as long as I had the proper education to do so. And I saw firsthand how education can become an equalizer in the playing field for anyone all over the world. So that started Building Education. And one thing I do want to say, I would love for Santosh to share one of his experiences for offering happiness. Like what was one of the experiences that he had, just to kind of give you guys an idea of the talents of this startup.
You know, before we do that, we will do that in a sec. I think people here need to understand who you guys are and what exactly it is you do in Nepal, because we're going to be talking about education. And so be like as clear as you can, like what is your mission in Nepal?
So before going, I think how many of us here has been to Nepal? Anyone? Okay.
Oh, one person! That's a miracle! Wow! Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah. Tell everyone what Nepal is.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about Nepal, so I'll just set a little context for Nepal, where it is, how's it, and everything, so that maybe it'll be easier for you to understand when we talk about the story than about Nepal. So Nepal is in South Asia, in between two big giants, India and China. We have China in the north, and on three sides of India. The population of Nepal is around 30 million, where 10 million Nepalese, they live outside of Nepal for employment opportunities and other opportunities, because we are actually a developing country, and there are so many problems that we have. But it's really beautiful. We have eight highest peak in the world. That's above 8,000. So in the world there are 14 highest peaks that are above 8,000, and we have 8 in our country, including Mount Everest. So that's how we get a lot of tourists and foreigners come to Nepal, visit Nepal. And we also is a land, birthplace of Gautam Buddha. So for people practicing Buddhism and who follow Buddhism, Nepal is a holy place for Buddhism. And it's a small country where there's a huge diversity in geographical landscape as well. We have tropical southern plains, and in the middle there's a hill, and above, north, there's a mountainous, including Mount Everest. And we have 123 ethnic communities and then 120 different languages in that small country. Wow. So it's a very diverse country.
Before we get into what exactly you guys are doing in Nepal, what percentage do you know of Nepalese that speak English?
The literacy rate in Nepal, first I think I should talk about the literacy rate itself. So it's around 67%. And most of the English education these days is in the English medium. That means we study every subject in English. So it's around 50% of Nepalese, they can speak English and even write and communicate in English. So around 50% of Nepalese who are educated, among those 67% can understand English.
Okay, so now we all know what Nepal is. We understand Nepal, right?
Right.
What are you guys doing in Nepal?
So Building Education is a nonprofit organization that serves to build safe schools, roads, energy systems, solutions, and water systems in Nepal to create sustainable communities. So essentially what we do is we go to very rural villages in Nepal, that's 70% of the country, and we develop rural villages into sustainable communities. So we're building ecosystems, we're building out the infrastructure so that they become essentially district hubs.
How many schools do you guys have in Nepal?
That's a great question. So right now we're funding for our 6th and 7th school, as you can see in the postcards. We just finished our 5th school and our 5th village, and we are at this very moment building our 6th school as we speak. So we just laid out the foundation.
How much does each school cost?
So roughly about $50,000. So we go into the villages themselves, and each village we build a school, a water system that might provide water to over 100 households. We then do energy solutions, so that could be grid electricity, or that can be solar panels. And then we also build out the roads. Everything that we do is alongside the government. We do it hand in hand in partnership with the government and the local community on site.
Well, I was just going to say, obviously things have changed drastically in the education space. And when we were doing our prep call, you mentioned that there's some foundational pieces that need to be put into place before we can get to the next level, specifically for education in Nepal, which helps us break out of this cycle of poverty. But what kinds of things can we leverage recently to maybe push the ball down the field a little bit more? Maybe similar how to in Africa, where there was a lack of infrastructure debt that needed to be replaced, they could just go straight for Wi-Fi. So how are you thinking about these two things?
Right now, what most of our work is focused on in building infrastructure, because kids in Nepal in the rural areas, they do not have access to basic education itself. So we mostly focus on building classrooms, safe classrooms. But what we also see in Kathmandu and the capital city in the town is definitely people leveraging AI tools and also building systems and edtech platforms in Kathmandu that slowly is, going to its village, but the infrastructure, even the connectivity itself is not that great in the mountainous country like Nepal. So we have some bottleneck there when we want to use this technology and evolving and technology in Nepal. But definitely we ourselves have been also talking to different people, even in Nepal and here in Silicon Valley as well. How can we take this technology and to the classrooms, also in the rural areas, so that something we can do so that we can leapfrog the process itself. Yeah, I think that we're trying our attempt, but it's definitely in Kathmandu, in the city area, people are using technology to, I would say, to leapfrog, but in the rural areas, it's even difficult when I'm speaking right now.
Sure.
Yeah, something to add to that. So our very first school in our first village was actually in a slum village, and it was in Poker City, so this area is a little bit more developed. Now these kids, when I first met them, they were barefoot, they could not speak English, they did not go to school, they couldn't tell me what their hopes and dreams were. We built a school essentially, we developed this whole area, they could speak English, they had access to Wi-Fi, we brought Wi-Fi on site, and because they had access to technology, it actually helped them to practice English and learn English because they were watching how to YouTube videos. So that was very helpful. However, when you go into very rural villages where there's about less than 100 households, you're talking about communities that, maybe a few years back were still living in caves. Like they're semi-nomadic, so that's how far backwards they are. So to think like even giving them technology, it's so far beyond their level. It's almost like saying you can just give a device to a child, to a baby, and that they're gonna figure out how to use it on their own and they're gonna be able to educate themselves, right? That's the impossibility. However, when it comes to technology, what I think we can utilize in developing villages is in the Himalayas, in Nepal specifically, are hydroponic systems. And we're still trying to figure out how to utilize that, just because hydroponics is an ability to provide like high yield food security for kids and for families in the village. And a lot of the land in the Nepal is not as arable because it is mountainous regions. And we are experiencing food insecurity in a lot of these villages. The second and third village that we've worked in, they get food 6 months out of the year. The other 6 months, mothers are giving up their meals every other day for their children. So people in these villages are only eating one meal every single 2 days. So I think that's how we can find different solutions to utilize
I've got an additional curveball question that we didn't plan on. So food insecurity needs to be addressed, but it sounds like 25% of Nepalese actually leave, so there's maybe something of a brain drain. What can the government do to put the kind of right rules in place to attract folks back, or maybe not have them leave at all, so we can create a sustainable community? How are you thinking about this, Santosh?
So right now, the number of people leaving the country is increasing day by day. It's actually the trend of leaving the country is high. It's increasing. So, but our government and people like, there's so many people and who are working back in Nepal, they are definitely thinking how do you do that reverse brain drain to the country with all the skills, network, and experience that learned outside of Nepal, bring back to Nepal, and then develop Nepal itself. There have been few initiatives for sure, but things should be in place. One, definitely the challenge that we have in Nepal is political instability. So every 9 months we have a new government, and policies are not very stable. So I think that's one of the reasons a lot of Nepalese young people, they leave the country. Other is we do not have systems and things in place. It's not streamlined. Everything is if you are well connected, then everything is possible in Nepal. If you're not connected and you want to follow the system, then it's very difficult to navigate in Nepal. So people are choosing to leave the country right now, but I can see if we can improve things like education and create employment in Nepal itself back, then we can definitely hold young people in Nepal.
Okay, so we've been talking about Nepal a lot. We're going to bring it back to America in just a second. I just have a few more just standard questions. How many people are in each one of these schools? How many students?
Depends, but it's usually around, we work in the schools which have more than 100 students. So
100 to 150 students.
100 to 400 students, I would say.
100 to 400 students?
Yeah.
For school that you built?
Yeah, some schools have 400 students, some schools have just 100 students. Yeah.
And from what grade to what grade?
So it's again, like, I'll say the 6th school that we're building, it has up to grade 8. And 90% of students drop out after grade 8 because they don't have option to go for grade 9 and 10. So what we're doing there in that school is we're building new classrooms so that government can extend the class grade to up to class 10 so that there's a low dropout.
Yeah, so essentially how it works, we do a lot of due diligence prior to selecting the school. So like just to select, I'll give you some insight, right? There was an earthquake in Nepal in 2015, damaged 9,000 schools. These are government schools, right? These are not like brand new private schools that we're building up in random villages. These are schools that are run by the government but just don't have a lot of resources and support to kind of rebuild all the destruction that has happened. And so like, there's still 4,000 or 5,000 schools that need to be rebuilt in Nepal. So our focus is really finding the schools that don't have the right resources and need just a little bit more funding and a little bit more strategy for us to take it forward. Now, saying that, we get a lot of proposals and we look through everything, and essentially what we do is we make sure that our donor dollars bring the most impact per dollar. So what you'll see in very rural villages of Nepal is like, because it's so far rural, a lot of these communities tend to immigrate to other villages, right? So like if this community or this village has less than 100 households, it's 30 households, they might move over to like 10 miles away to another village and then start to build up that village. So building education, we go into these rural villages, we do our research, we figure out where is the best location for us to build up their school, their communities, where we can turn it into a district hub, and then we can build roads that lead up and it'll turn it into an economic marketplace, essentially.
What's it like working with the government? Because like aggregating this information, making these decisions, sounds like it's a tall order, no?
So it's a lot of, yeah, Santos, honestly, like we wouldn't be able to accomplish anything without Santos, because as we know, even with Silicon Valley, San Francisco, it's all about networking, it's all about relationship building, it's about understanding how the government works, how business culture works in a specific area. So like Santos is like famous in Nepal, you know, he doesn't give himself enough credit, but he's an outlier. Like, let's be honest, like he's an outlier. We're really blessed and lucky to have him working for building education. He runs multiple companies himself, right? So like Santos, who is going to go into politics as well, has all the connections, is able for us to cross that red tape. But in every single collaboration, it's always a negotiation. It's not like, as an INGO or international organization, we can't just go into a place and say, hey, we're the American savior, we're here to help you, right? Like, you have a problem, let us help you. Like, that doesn't work anywhere. You just create opposition. So it's really about humanizing the experiences, humanizing your beneficiaries, seeing them as equal people, empowering them, creating leaders in the community, asking them what it is that they need, creating a collaboration from the government to the beneficiaries on the ground, to partner organizations, to people like Santos, and really like making that impact and change. But Santos probably has a lot more answers about how challenging it is with governments, but it's a lot of negotiation. So nothing is ever like fast.
Yeah, so just adding a few things on that part, it's definitely bringing different parties and stakeholders in the same ground. So we work with local government, usually it's municipalities or rural municipalities, and then we bring a local partner that's a local organization working in that community. So we bring them together and then try building the school, which is in a really poor status. When I say really poor status, some schools don't even have roofs. In some of the schools, 3 different grades, let's say class 1, class 2, and class 3 are sharing the same classroom because they do not have enough classrooms. And the walls are so old and cracked that they feel unsafe to study. So we select those schools where the impact is going to be higher and work alongside the government. When working alongside the government, in the 4th school, that was I joined building education last year. So that was my first school, that first project that I worked was in the 4th school. And that school, it was at the top of the hill, and there wasn't the road connectivity to that school itself. So we had to construct a built road just to build that school. So there was a lot of negotiation that we had to do with the local government just to build. First they had to build the road, then we'll build the school. So there was a lot of bringing buy-in from government as well. So if you don't have buy-in and ownership from government and local people, then we bringing the resources to that, this doesn't make sense. So we first bring everyone on board and then work in that area.
All right, we understand Nepal, we understand what you're dealing with. Let's bring it to America, okay? Obviously we have a person who's gonna be a new president soon. And the education system is a huge debate in this country. Let's start off with, what do you see that Nepal is doing better than America?
In terms of education, I think not doing that great. Public education is, for the basic education is free, but it's very difficult for students to motivate to go to school because we do not have, the schools are too far. You have to walk 1 or 2 hours just to reach to school. So students and kids don't have motivation just to go to school, right? That's the first problem that we have back in home. But here, I think the things are different. In Nepal, higher education is not that expensive, but again, not that the quality of education is not that great as well. So that people choose to leave the country for better education and better, higher quality of life. So that's one. But something that Nepal is doing, or I'm super proud of, is in Nepal is definitely the community and the sense of togetherness and hospitality that we have. In Nepal, the community that we have is like we celebrate everything together, be it festivals or people, if there's anyone in need, then the entire village come for the same festival, or people, there's someone in need. So I think the sense of togetherness is unmatched, and the hospitality that we have in Nepal, be it for the foreigners or just for like anyone in Nepal, it's amazing.
Nepalese are very happy people also too.
I think we have a different perspective to look at it, because we have so many problems, but we are happy and satisfied. So I think that's why we're not growing in this topic. But like, it's
Less is
definitely.
more sometimes.
Like we have our own challenges from an education perspective, and as I understand it, when there's a grant that's awarded to like a university to do a project, 6% of it has to go back to the institution, when it really could be going to the end project itself. So it's like there's challenges everywhere, right?
Can I press into that community? So it sounds like because the community is so strong, you guys don't have the same issues that we might have here with, suicide and loneliness, and is that what we're sort of getting at here?
It's not a big problem in Nepal. I mean, definitely the mental health awareness, mental health issues are definitely, we can see that happening in the city area, but in rural Nepal, or like, people are like, when I say we have the sense of community, and like people stay, even today people stay in joint families, they don't leave homes. So I was talking to Wendy the other day, and I was saying that I still live with my parents. And if I decide to leave home or not stay with my parents, then it's not considered normal in Nepal, right? I have to stay with my parents, I have to stay with my society and the community. So it's a very communal kind of culture that we have. And in that you get a lot of support, and definitely when I say support, it's emotional support also. And so the problem that we see, the rising problem of mental health, suicide, and loneliness that we see in the Western countries and the US, it's definitely, the number is way lower in Nepal.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and we're going to open it up. You can ask anything you want in terms of education. You don't have to just keep it to Nepal. They're experts in education. So when people look at you, Wendy, do they ever say, why Nepal? Why not Bhutan? Why not Laos? Why not Cambodia? Why Nepal?
Does it have anything to do with you being Miss Nepal?
No, I'm actually not Nepalese. So I'm Miss Nepal actually after I started the projects in Nepal. So I'm Chinese American, born and raised here in San Francisco. And what happened was, when I was working in the aviation industry, I was a jet engine specialist, and I made a trip to India on Deepavali. It's a festival, and I did some volunteer work there, and I ended up in Nepal right after that, because I was really curious about this country with this terraced landscapes. And when I first traveled to Nepal, I was a very naive traveler. I got lost a lot, and I remember this taxi driver who drove me around for 2 hours until I found my hostel. And that kind of stuck with me, the kindness of the people, of wanting to help me find where my hostel was when I was lost and they didn't even know me, which is something that you wouldn't really find in the US. And I remember thinking that, like, if that person hadn't helped me, who couldn't even speak English, by the way, I don't know where I would have been. And so after that happened, I heard about the earthquake that happened. It was 6 months later. I was actually teaching English in Thailand, in a very rural village of Thailand. And the earthquake damaged 9,000 schools, killed 9,000 people, 750,000 homes destroyed. And I just had this calling. I was like, I need to go back and help. Like, these people helped me when I was in need, and I need to go back and help. And all my Thai teachers were like, no, Wendy, you have to stay here. Don't go, don't leave. Nepal's very developing. And I was like, I don't know, something within me is calling me to go. I have to go. So it started off that way. I just volunteered in earthquake disaster relief. It was horrific. I mean, like the whole country was destroyed. You know, we were cleaning up rubble. I worked in displacement camps where people from the mountains came down and were like essentially living in their own feces. We built temporary schools out of bamboo. We built homes. I mean, I was like down in the weeds on my knees, building and cleaning and trying to build bridges in all these locations just to create like better living infrastructure. And after I finished my volunteering time, I had someone who approached me and was like, please come and help us build more schools. And I actually said no for 6 months. I was like, no, I can't, you know, I just quit my job, you know, as a jet engine specialist. I'm just traveling now. I don't have the money, I don't have the resources. But he continued to message me for 6 months, and then finally I said yes. So it really started with that. I started off with building the very first wall, which was $2,000, and then building the entire school, which was another $30,000. And then I worked in the slum village, and the next step was like the water system, you know, because people were dying. And just from building the water system, we lowered the death rate by 90%. 90%. Like, I didn't even know that that was the solution that we were going to create, to be honest. I didn't know why people were dying, but it turned out it was the water, right? And then from there, we did the electricity. So it was literally just working with the community, listening to what their needs were, giving them what they need, and also funding the wrong things and learning from that too. After like 3 or 4 years of working in this area, essentially we created our model. I saw this entire community transforming before my eyes. And with the completion of that first village, I actually met Santosh right after that, right? And we had to the empowerment conferences for the women who learned how to like start businesses. We built the roads. And so it drew in this local economy into this slum area, and it just like became this like completely transformed village where they were starting businesses. The kids could speak English. We had our very first university student graduate, right? She works in a hospital. She's a pharmacist now. She wants to build a health clinic in her village, you know, like seeing that transformation, I was like, no, I have to move back. You know, by this time I was living in Spain. I was living a very nice life in Mallorca. So it was island life. It was very comfortable. But I also had that same calling. I was like, I have to come back to Silicon Valley. I have to fundraise for the second school, the third school, and just like scale this model to other areas. Yeah.
Just real quickly, and then we're gonna do some questions, so start thinking about this. As you're thinking about fundraising for a nonprofit, how is that different from fundraising for a startup?
That's a very good question. Well, I actually don't, I think it's more challenging to be honest, but I don't think it's that different, right? It's like, still when I look back, it's all trial and error, so it's really getting your message out and getting the branding and marketing out and awareness about the organization. So the first thing that takes is vision and passion for what it is that you're sharing with people, right? For people to buy into the mission, that's number one. And then number two is like creating community, like literally creating community of like-minded individuals who trust and believe in you, who share the same values as you. And those values, like my values are definitely integrity, it's transparency, it's honesty, it's making a difference, right? Changing the world, right? Which I'm sure everybody in this room wants to change the world as well. We're in Silicon Valley. So it's finding those like-minded individuals, building community around your cause. And the third thing is actually creating products. You know, like sometimes I'm selling a school, right? Sometimes I'm trying to get 10 people to buy a school. Sometimes I'm selling a table at a gala, right? Like sponsorships. And building products around it. And then I think the last step is really finding out who your customers are. So I kind of outline, like, these are my top 3 customers. These are what they like. These are the things that they like. This is how they're gonna perform. These are what their values are. And then figuring out who is in my customer base that matches with, you know, the organization.
Great answer, thank you.
All right, does anyone have a question? If not, I've got another 5. All right, favorite person.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I am also a jet engine specialist, so we have that problem. And I'm Miss Arkansas, so we're very I think neither one of us are true.
Are you more Pratt and Whitney or GE?
More GE. What a great information about Nepal. My question was about with so many languages or dialects, do people know all of those? Like in a school, how do you work that as far as the languages go? Do like all the students know a bunch of different dialects and then they're able to learn? And how do you decide what language you're gonna use?
So in Nepal, like the languages that I said, 123 languages,
Yeah.
it's usually mother tongue. So it's not taught in their schools, it's taught in their home, and they speak with their own ethnic communities. So that's not an official language or national language. We have a common language that's spoken all around Nepal, that's Nepali, and then the other language that in schools that are taught is English. So English and Nepali is taught in English in a school, but like the mother tongue that I said, 123 different languages, they're actually spoken and communicated in their homes. So if I am in school, it's not a problem for me to communicate with any of my friends. But if I go to their homes, sometimes it's very difficult because I don't understand the language they are speaking there. So if I have grown or brought in that area, then I somehow, if I'm not part of that ethnicity, but I learn that language because it's easier for me to communicate. So usually in Nepal, one person knows at least 3 to 4 languages. Yeah.
How many languages do you know?
Four.
Yes.
So inspiring. For the last year or so, there's a Rehan school in Pakistan that's been reaching out to me and many others to do podcasts so they can learn English by doing podcasts. These are like 8, 10, 13-year-old kids. Are you doing anything like that to help them bridge to the outside world?
Actually, that's a really great question. So when we were raising funds for our very first school, I was working in a school in Spain at the time, and that's exactly what we did. We had my students in Spain, essentially write letters in English, right, because they were learning English from me, and then write letters to the students in Nepal. And so the kids in Nepal then wrote back letters in English and they exchanged it. And so my kids in Spain actually were the ones who ended up fundraising to build the school in Nepal. So they built the first wall. And so not only was that teaching them the importance and value of learning English, which is a dominant language in the world, but they also learned that they can make an impact and they can make a change at a very young age. So it's a great program. Great question. And I think we want to definitely continue on something like that moving forward.
Anyone else? Oh, right back.
Hi, I have a multi-part question. Maybe you'll have some of the answers. Have you watched 60 Minutes? It was a pretty interesting episode. My original question was involving AI, but what I saw on this 60-minute episode is that they're hiring people in Nigeria to help with AI. And you figure, what they're doing, you have all these companies, Meta, you have Google, that are paying people in Nigeria $1 an hour to basically train AI models. Now, you said there's a 50% English rate, correct? What about the Wi-Fi capability? Is there good internet connectivity in these villages?
In the villages, it's not, but the internet connectivity is increasing every year. Now it should be around 60 to 70% is covered with internet. The entire Nepal, yeah.
Yeah, this could be a big opportunity. I mean, the big companies in Silicon Valley are paying these people nothing to basically train these AI models. They could be doing the same thing.
Yes, thank you. I'll just add something on this.
Yeah.
So in Nepal, it's definitely we are emerging as market, like in terms of human resource. Right now, a lot of big companies here in the US or around the world is using human resources from Nepal for any business process operations work. Let's say the outsourcing work has been done in Nepal, data leveling and all this training AI. We're even doing those work. So there are companies in Nepal that they're building companies and creating job opportunities for people who speak English. That's happening in Nepal. And this time, me and Wendy, we were talking to so many people in Silicon Valley. How can we connect Nepalese ecosystem with Silicon Valley's ecosystem? So we're actually exploring that part.
Anyone else? Oh, up front here. Right here. Oh, sorry. Put your hand down too fast. Give it to her, please, right there.
So entrepreneurship is a lot of an art, I think, of taking something that's like basically an idea and like bringing it to fruition.
And I think being in Silicon Valley, we live in an ecosystem that has the privilege of having a lot of supporting and nourishing resources for that kind of like entrepreneurship and birth of new ventures. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how in Nepal, in an area that maybe has less resources and less of an established ecosystem for things like that, how you've started like your own ventures and how you've been able to kind of like take those first steps when you first had those ideas for these new businesses, for these new nonprofit companies, schools, and things like that. What those first kind of steps look like, taking it from an idea into something in reality.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So 8 years back, when I was in my undergrad second year, that's when I met my co-founders, and then I used to organize events in the college. So different kind of events. It's usually talk programs and leadership trainings for young people. So that's what I used to do back then. But when doing that, I met my co-founders, where we thought, let's create opportunities in Nepal. Let's create a job opportunity in Nepal. So what we did was started my first e-commerce company, where we used to curate experiences in Nepal. For example, you could book a wedding proposal at the base camp of Mount Everest, or celebrate your birthdays at the highest altitude, right? You can just do that in Nepal. So we started curating these experiences with local businesses and started selling online. In Nepal, it was difficult for us to start because our ecosystem, startup ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem is not that great. But young people right now are definitely being more interested in entrepreneurship. More people are joining, creating their own ventures. And there were a few challenges. One is definitely infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, internet connectivity. Second, we're not used to buying online, so we have to change the consumer behavior completely, bring them from in-person to online buying behavior. So we had so much of education awareness to be done, and we did that. So I think, and then that also brought, along with like challenges, it also was very rewarding for me personally, because I learned a lot in terms of how to create a business in that difficult situation. That improved my own resiliency and perseverance, I would say. Yeah.
All right, who else? Oh, yes. Yes, go ahead.
And I also want to add, like, Nepal is just such a beautiful country where there's so much untapped potential, right? It's an emerging market. And so, like, a lot of the things that, because I've been going back for 10 years now, you know, I love the country, and I've seen just, like, fascinating development in there. One of the things is, like, boba shops are very popular here, right? So within the last 1 year, boba's been popular there. So, like, a lot of the things that are popular here, people are bringing actually into Nepal. So that's, like, one thing. And the other thing is, there's a lot of great possible investments. Like, we were talking about hydropower, right? Like, so what is the value that Nepal in general has to add to the global economy? So hydropower, because India needs clean energy by 2030, right? Is it completely? Nepal has this great space in which they can create all these hydropower plants that can then support India. Like, so it's really finding, like, what is the value that Nepal has to add to the global economy, and also looking at, like, what's popular here in the West that we can then bring into Nepal and be able to scale as well.
All right. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. My question is around transparency. So it's a two-part question. So my first question is marketing hat on. How are you differentiating yourself? I know I've heard a little bit about how you're differentiating yourself, right? When you reach out to donors and potential partners. And the second part is part of that, the solution to that transparency, and how are you doing that?
How are you marketing yourself, and tell us about your transparency?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So I think in general, when you mean differentiating ourselves from other nonprofits,
Yes.
That's a very good question. So in general, like, there's other international organizations. The biggest one, as we know, is Cherry Water. They focus on water systems, right? Room to Read builds libraries, and they're focused on literacy. Well, building education, we go into very rural villages, and we literally develop the village into a sustainable community ecosystem. I honestly don't know any other organization, and it's not even intentional, it was just that we saw a need. I honestly don't know any other organization that's doing that that is going into very rural villages and building out the entire infrastructure, taking the model and then scaling it. So that's number one, and I don't ever look at it as competition because there's so much rural, 70% of Nepal is rural, and we haven't even reached Africa, right? Where there's over 250 million children that do not have access to primary school education. There's 700 million people in this world that still suffer from poverty, which is living below the international poverty line of $2.15 a day. So differentiating, that doesn't really even matter in nonprofit space because in general, there's so much work that needs to be done that there's no competition. The second thing that it comes to is relationship building. Because, you're not gonna go and give me 100K right now, right? But it's how can I build trust in the relationship? How can I make sure that what I'm doing also supports your values, supports your vision? How can we collaborate and partner together? How can this be a way where we're making an impact together? Everything in nonprofit is about relationship building. That's the whole thing with transparency, right? Trusting who it is that I am as a person, that my values are in the right place, and that I'm doing my best to make a difference and create the impact you want in this world.
All right, I want to say something. When Nick and I are programming these, the reason I bought onto this one is because I've served in some of the poorest parts of the world, and you can't just build a school without infrastructure. It doesn't work. So if any of you ever end up in South Sudan, where there is nowhere to throw away your garbage, where there's basically no clean water anywhere, it's hard to find any food, it is impossible to have a school. And the reason this works is because of the infrastructure they're building. Go to any third world country where there's no infrastructure, you will see one failed school after another. I have a couple questions. We'll get back to the audience in a second. I want one incredible success story of one student that you guys nurtured and is doing something amazing today. Let's hear it.
So Rebecca BK, she's the very first student in our very first village that she actually graduated from the university and now is a pharmacist. So let me just paint the picture of the significance of that. In the past, nobody in her family had completed education up to class 8. Her brother went out for out-migration, meaning that he's working in a Gulf country and they haven't heard from him. He actually went out, they were able to fund his ability to fly out through loan sharks, right? And so they're paying out huge debts just for his flight out of country. He's probably working as slave labor. He's barely sending any money back to his family, and we don't know where he is to this day. Now, both her parents, her mother probably has education up to 8 years old, her father up to 8th grade level. So being the very first girl in her entire family to have completed education, studies have shown that changes 3 entire family generations after that. That means she's entirely ended the cycle of poverty for her entire family future. And not just that, and I can't emphasize how important it is to actually invest in females' education because it's been shown that if there is one single solution to ending global poverty, it's about educating your females. Yeah. So for the 700 million people that are living in poverty, if you educated every single person up to at least secondary school level, you would actually cut the poverty rate by more than half.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna ask one more question and then we're gonna open it back up to the audience. I'll come to you next.
So I guess.
Hold on. It's gonna come to you next.
So everybody applauded. First of all, I am a philanthropist and for 21 years, and my passion is helping the less fortunate. So I want to applaud you, first of all, for all you have been doing and continue to do. And I'm really honored to be here and listening to your success story. So let's give them a big round of applause. My next question as a philanthropist who believes in transparency and accountability, I would like to know how you raise funds in the US besides, the internet and websites, how do you come up with gala? Where do you host them? And what do you do? How do you want us involved besides giving, money like that? I believe in getting together and, telling people what you are doing, like you are doing now, up to 5, 6, 7, 800 people.
Sure. So in terms of fundraising and how we raise money, we have like different levels in which people join. So we have high net worth donors, or like higher donors that donate specifically to projects. We have donors that donate monthly. We have donors that donate to specific campaigns. So we say, okay, we're building the 6th school. This is how much money we need for the 6th school. Then we might just do crowdfunding. And then of course we do events. So right now our bases are Silicon Valley, San Francisco. We've also started fundraising in LA and Seattle. And hopefully we plan to get out into New York. And then we also get funding from grants and foundations. We get corporate grants as well, in addition to other organizations that are aligned with us, so like Rotary clubs, Lions clubs. It's constantly knowing where to look for those pockets of money, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And then just continuing to grow the community, right? And building the relationship with your current donors. Like, I can't emphasize how important that is. Like letting every donor know that you value them and you appreciate them, bringing them to Nepal. We have investors that are coming to Nepal this next coming year. So, looking for ways to involve them in the process.
Also, Elon, if you're watching this, for the internet, Starlink.
Yes, Starlink.
We'll do one more question and then.
I think I saw a hand over there.
Did you? I saw a hand over there.
No.
Oh, we're good.
No.
It's better be good, bro. You're the last one.
Thank you so much for all your wisdom for today and knowledge. And I see education is very important, especially for a third world country. And I want to ask, like, even if you build a new school over there in Nepal, how can you persuade, and what's your strategy of getting the new children to get motivated to be educated? And like they always say, knowledge is power.
So once the school is built, do they just come?
So, maybe it might sound a little funny, but I want to share a small incident. In the first school that we built, we also built a playground nearby. So students, they never used to show up in the school, but when you had that playground by the school, at 8 in the morning, all the schools, there were 100% attendance. Kids were already there playing. So when we visited the school, we were super happy, and even the parents were like saying, my kid is so motivated to go to school because they have playground right there. So I think things like smaller like this, I think it plays a really good, important role.
How do we build it?
Okay, I'll ask that in 1 second. You can ask that in 1 second. All right, so here.
Question back here.
I know.
Sorry, I'll take it.
All right, go ahead and we'll ask her question. But before we get to her question, so here we have this room full of people. If somebody here is motivated and says, "Oh my God, I haven't done anything meaningful with my life, and I'm inspired by you. How can I volunteer and help?" What do you say to somebody like that?
I would ask what their talents are. Usually what we do is we do have a lot of volunteers that support. We have a team member here as well. And I always try to identify, like, what is the impact that they want to make? How do they want to support? Because that's what it really is about, right? It's a partnership and it's a collaboration between people that have aligned values. So some of the options are they can either come to Nepal and make a trip with us, right? They can donate towards a project. They can look for investment opportunities in Nepal. The other thing is they can volunteer on the team.
Yeah, what if they want to teach and help the kids and just be boots on the ground?
Absolutely.
That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely opportunity to do that. When it comes to the schools, it's actually built by the parents of the kids, and that creates community buy-in, right? Because the more that the parents are involved in the process, they're going to motivate their kids to go. But we can always set up a time where volunteers can also come during the time and build with the parents. But we have had volunteers come and teach English themselves. I've done it. Brandon just did it recently. We have the STEM kits that we got from Karkana, and we were teaching kids. So we love to make trips and also work with kids.
All right, our last question, Miss.
Hi, this is Jackie Lopez with the San Francisco Urban Agriculture Committee. I am very impressed by what you've done, not just including the educational side to food, but as well as preserving the community. I'm really intrigued and I want to know, how are your schools being a pillar of the community to elevate the culture but preserve the ancestral knowledge?
Santosh, you
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and so it's best in, like, for example, the teachers that we talked about, it's for the first, when we build the school itself, we have the community buy-in, local governments, I mean, kind of makes place to us that they will hire local teacher to, because we need additional teacher when we upgrade the infrastructure, right? So that's a local government, they take care of that part. And in Nepal, like, local government also can decide the curriculum of what's taught to the students. So in every local government, they have their own, right now, let's say for example, in Kathmandu, around Kathmandu, what we're doing is, there's an additional subject beside all the science, math, and English, and everything that we study in school. We also study heritage. So we study what's our history, what the heritages of our, because there are hundreds of temples in Kathmandu, so they know about the temples. So in that way, every curriculum in every local villages is so different, because they have their own additional specialized subject that's taught to these kids. I think that way we have been working with community, they have a high buy-in. That way we're trying to preserve the local culture and also the essence of the village itself. Yeah.
So we got a lot of zombies that are watching virtually as well. Maybe we could give a plug to a website or somewhere that could be helpful to, so our zombie community could be helpful to you guys as well.
Where to donate.
Yeah.
Where can we donate?
Yeah.
So if you look at the postcard, there's actually a QR code where you can donate directly and learn more about the organization. But the website is www.bebuildingeducation.org. You can also follow us on Instagram at Building Education, Facebook is Building Education, LinkedIn Building Education.
And it's $40,000 a school.
50,000. Yeah.